I'm getting ready to make charcoal. This is my setup that I use. I've got a smaller barrel that I put inside the 55-gallon drum, and you'll see that setup in just a minute. Now I'm going to go put wood in it, fill it with wood, and I'll come back and show you that later. When making charcoal, I like to cut my wood about maybe an inch and a half, and then let it dry. I stack it up and let it dry. As you can see, the barrel is starting to fill up, and I'll be back with more video. There, I got the bottom half of the barrel filled. I like to do this in 2 sections because I go out and cut. I've been cutting trees that are already fallen. This is birch. We do get other wood. We do have other hardwoods here in Alaska, but this is the hardest that we have. Poplar and cottonwood are hardwood, technically hardwoods also, but they would not be as hard and not work as well. What I found, the softer the wood, the cooler the fire burns. And I am doing this because I got started up making iron. So I'm making charcoal, and that's going to be the fuel for making iron. Even my dog gets involved, but she doesn't put it in the bucket well enough. You get all the wood in the barrel. I like to have it even with the top of the barrel, but don't worry about it if it protrudes a little tiny bit, because it'll all settle down when you're making charcoal. Now what's going to happen, I'm going to turn this 55-gallon drum upside down on top of this 30-gallon drum, and then we'll flip the whole thing over again to where it's looking just like this, and then I'll pack wood around the edges, as you'll see, and then start the fire. I've got holes in the top and the bottom for air breathing. As you can see, I turned the barrel over. This is what it's going to look like. That's what it looks like inside. Turned over, ready to go. I had an old pressure tank, water pressure tank, and I made this skirt out of it. I'm going to put a fire down on the bottom also, and one on top. And this skirt, keeps the wind from blowing the heat away, and it kind of concentrates the heat up into the charcoal. Now let's put some wood inside and start the fire. Now we've got wood around the barrel, and my preference, I like using spruce for this because it burns hotter and faster. I also said that I started making charcoal because I wanted to make iron. So far I have made iron out of 4 different types of material in Alaska, all of which have been iron soaked with just mineral that's in groundwater, iron mineral. So here's a couple other things that I'm just experimenting with in the fire. This is some kind of clay that came from the interior, but I'm hoping the reddish in there is iron from iron mineral. This is about the closest I have seen to a piece of bog ore in the lower 48 and other places that make iron similar to this. They use bog ore, and I can't say that I've actually found any in Alaska, but this is going to be a lot of sand and some vegetation root mass in there, so we'll see. This here is a coprolite. Found this up the highway, and I'm not sure if it'll do any good or not, but we'll see. Now, finish the fire and get it started, and then come back. This is another type of material I used for making iron. It's basically sand that has been cemented together by thousands of years of pressure and iron mineral passing through it. I don't know if you can see the band of iron, just an iron mineral. It's not iron, it's not magnetic until after you roast it. But that's what I'm doing now, making charcoal and roasting a couple different types of material that I want to see if they work for making iron out of. Materials like this, I've tried several that are heavy in sand, and they make a lot of slag and hardly any iron to speak of. But they still make iron. There's many videos on YouTube for making charcoal and making iron. This is just the process that I found works best for me. I like to use what I have, and I just had this stuff around, and so that's why I'm doing it this way. It's a nice fall day and the ground is wet, so I'm not really worried about catching anything on fire, and I've got a big enough chunk of property that I'm not going to be offending my neighbors with a bunch of smoke. But there are much better charcoal plans out there. This just works for me. You can see those little holes at the bottom there. The wood inside is starting to burn. Fire's looking good. Top is burning good. At this point, I like to put a lid on it once I get some good coals going. That's the lid I use, which is the top of that domestic water pressure tank. And then the bottom is just a fire pit. So I don't like wasting stuff and like to use what I have. Now I've got the hot gases from making the charcoal flaring off there. There are plans out there where you can make a charcoal making furnace that re-burns this like a rocket stove type setup. That is a pretty interesting setup, but I never got into doing that, so this has worked fine for me. The charcoal has cooled down, and so let's open it up and see what we have. Okay, as you remember, I put a couple things in here that I thought would be magnet. This rock here is just mostly sand. It does have a magnetic element to it, but it's not magnetic enough to mess with. The coprolite that I put in there, magnetic. Got another rock. That might be a chunk of hematite. This clay material that I was curious about. Doesn't work, but just getting samples and just seeing what happens. Now I'm gonna open up the charcoal. There you go, the finished product. Got some nice, beautiful charcoal here. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. Like I used to tell guys that work for me, there's many ways to get a project done. You just need to find one that works best for you. I hope you can gather some ideas from this and use them in your own projects. Thank you.